Hello there. So, it has been 1 week since the next gen dropped, and I got some thoughts. I got I got a lot of testing thoughts and a lot of initial thoughts about the new stuff that dropped by. And yeah, I'll hold my judgment until a lot more patches come through, because it has been a solid launch for both of the consoles. But I wouldn't say that it's the smoothest one by any stretch. But overall, it's been a great experience for most people. I would think that the hardest part with every console generation launch is always the availability of the systems. Luckily, I was able to get both my Xbox Series X and my PlayStation 5 almost on time. My Xbox Series X, because I had it ordered with from the Microsoft Store, it came right on time. My PlayStation 5 was delayed by about a few days, by a couple days, which is no big deal, because then I was able to play more Xbox Yakuza games and everything. So that was actually really cool. But like that overall solid positive experience. I think for most people trying to find one of these systems, it's been really rough, and retailers and the console manufacturers haven't really figured out a solid way on how to have a queue system properly in place to order one of these, because there are a lot of people out there that genuinely want to own these systems and not want to scalp them like how a bunch of other crazy people are doing, which is awful. I've seen like videos of guys that like bought like 10 of them, and and they're selling them for like $1,000 a piece for like the PlayStation 5s, and it's like, that's not cool, dude. Like, there are kids that want this stuff that probably earned it, and they just can't get their hands on it because someone's buying up all of the systems. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but I don't know how you could curb that. The sneaker community kind of found a way through its online auctions and everything, so maybe they could utilize that system, maybe like an app-based system or queue system for ticketing. But yeah, overall, that's kind of been a crapshoot. That's kind of been a downer for a lot of people that want to jump into next gen but won't be able to because availability and stock is low, and that stock is also limited, and that problem has been exacerbated more due to the fact that COVID is around, and it's hard to develop and manufacture all these materials and graphics processors and everything during this time. So it's not been the perfect launch, but overall, besides that, it's been pretty okay. My personal experience right now from using the systems for about a few days, like I've had my PlayStation 5 for about 5 days. This thing needs an update. It's crashed on me a couple of times, once playing Astro's Playroom and playing Bugsnax. And that's not due to the software's fault, because in the message that it displays, it's definitely not fault of the actual game. It's definitely a fault of like the internal software. And I've noticed and I've read that if you put your system into the rest state, which is like what most of us do anyway, that's what causes the problem. There's something wrong with the suspended animation of the game and the OS itself that causes this problem. So if I were you, if you don't want to lose a lot of your saves and a lot of your data or progression, I would, once you're done playing with the system or done with your game, just turn off the whole system entirely. I haven't run into that problem too much, mainly because I have a smart switch which automatically turns on Viperic energy sources like consoles, extraneous like charging and everything like that, so it just automatically shuts down everything. So I don't really have that problem, but I have to make sure that every time to shut down the entire system. So that means like complete game saves and complete turn-offs of the system. It kind of sucks for this system because it doesn't have some sort of quick resume function built into it. It has a lot of good like quick switching in between certain games, but it's not the same kind of level of quick resume that the Xbox Series X has. And I'll get to that in a moment. But overall, I really like the PlayStation 5. It's actually like, I don't know how to describe it, but the way that this is made is definitely like a labor of love and a lot of daring, and I appreciate the level of artistry that went into this kind of box. It's too big, I can tell you that. Holding this in my arms feels like I'm holding like a shield, whereas the Xbox Series X, I could hold it like in my the crux of my forearm, so it feels like I'm holding like a baby, like a very, actually it's about the same weight, so like yeah, it's kind of like a baby. This is a little too big, especially for my entertainment center. I had to stack it in the vertical position, outside of the case, like on top of it, standing up. So it is an odd shaped console, but I think it looks fantastic. The more I look at it, the less I get discouraged about its looks, and I don't really mind it too much. I mean, that's what happens to all the consoles anyway, because it's just going to be sitting there. If I were to gripe on a couple of things, this center black strip is very fingerprint heavy, and since it's made out of plastic, it has like this staticky kind of feeling after a while, so it collects dust really easily, and so that's it's kind of cheapy looking. The white outside isn't too bad, although the plastic, like, see how this kind of flexes? I don't know how this will stand the test of time. Kids will obviously drop this, or people will drop things on it and it might shatter, because that's what plastics do. And yeah, that other than that, I think it's okay. Sony continues its long legacy of not being able to stack things on top of it, because this thing doesn't have a flat surface, so it's kind of difficult to do that. Overall, it's been pretty quiet. I wouldn't say it's as quiet as the Xbox Series X, because I do hear this, the fans were on this a few times. But that just means it's working. As long as it works, I don't care. But it won't explain a lot of the crashing that's going on. Would probably be solved in a firmware update in the future. I've already been using all the ports, actually. So in order to play the PlayStation 4 games for backwards compatibility, I've been using my old PlayStation 4 500 gigabyte drive. So I took this out of my old PlayStation 4, the OG one. And I installed a 1 terabyte drive into that one. So I had this extra drive with all the extra like games on it from my PlayStation. So that's like Days Gone, Ghost of Tsushima, The Last of Us Part 2. So I put it in here, and the nice thing is that you could take it right from your PlayStation 4 console, plug it straight into your PlayStation 5, and it'll recognize it and start installing games straight onto here. That's super nice to have. I don't have to go through the hassle of getting the disc again or downloading it straight from PSN again. I love that. It saves me time, and it saves me a lot of hassle for downloading. So yeah, works out pretty well. Although I will say, however, there is kind of a weird thing. So yeah, if you've never used an external hard drive with your PlayStations before, what it does when it boots up is that it has to like journal and index the hard drive to make sure that nothing's corrupt on it. So a couple times when I had this on sleep mode and I went to go watch TV or something and I came back to it, this thing had a hard time initializing. So it would take a while, and I could hear it, and there's like this mini red and blue LED light on the top of it to tell you the read access. And so it will go on and off and then kind of like shut down and then go back on again, and I could hear it because the PlayStation 5 is booting up and on again, and I could see the light strip, which is normally like white and orange up here. So I could see it turning on and off and cycling through the boot. And then it takes a while, and then it finally gets going. So it's kind of weird. I'm really wary about that, because normally if your system boots up a lot like that, especially on like a mechanical hard drive, that causes a lot of errors and a lot of sectors to be bad. So I really hope there's a firmware update coming up soon for the PlayStation 5. Other than that, the system's kind of great. The OS takes a little bit getting used to, because all the shortcuts that you're used to for your PlayStation 4 system are in completely different places. So like if you want to see your trophies, or if you want to see or if you want to get access to your sound levels, they're kind of hidden in these weird places, but it takes some time to learn, but once you learn it, you know where it's at. It's all mainly dominated. The OS is dominated by the card system that they made for all their games, which is great. It actually it makes sense once you start using it. I also do appreciate the achievement guide or the hints guide part of the cards. That was actually really helpful when like trying to 100% Astro's Playroom, which is the first PlayStation game I ever platinumed before. Mainly because like I don't really care to platinum games. It doesn't really have any value to me. But like that was the one where I could utilize. I was like, you know what? I'm super close to platining this game. All I need is like a couple of hints and to where to find it within Astro's Playroom, and I'm good to go. And so the card system that has the hint section into it, I use that right away. It's super easy, and it doesn't really spoil it for you. It gives you like a really good hint on where these trophies might lie. And yeah, it was pretty excellent to use that. Something I never thought I'd be using or depending on in next gen, but it's a thoughtful feature to have. I hope most or more video game developers utilize that feature in the future, because it'd be really helpful to teach people how to play certain games, because not all of us are video game literate, and the more people you get into console gaming and gaming in general, the better the community is, and yada yada yada. It's this whole, you know, what do you call it, snowball effect of everything gamer centric, and it's more positive in the end. So yeah, I do like that. I don't like how there's like a lot of advertising tied into the cards or in the exploration tab, and it kind of like just shows you crap that it's like, I don't care about this. I don't want to see a huge advertisement for Overwatch or Fortnite. I don't really care about that. So that's kind of like, yeah, you have to put your advertising somewhere, and that's how Sony implemented it. I do like that the layout of the OS right now is kind of stacked, where like you have the main game, you have your games tab, and then you have your media tab, and so it leaves this large middle space in the screen for like your wallpapers or motion wallpapers. So you can actually see, like when you have customized themes and wallpapers, you can actually see them now, which is cool. And then yeah, other than that, the installation process was really smooth. I don't like the packaging for the PlayStation 5, which is like totally negligible for all things considering. But like the presentation when you open it, it's like, oh, it's just here in these egg cartons of of packaging. That's all it is. Whereas like the Xbox Series X, it was more of like an event, like the way that they presented it to you and the way that it was packaged. It was actually really neat. But I mean, those things don't really matter. It's the games that matter. So I only have currently 2 next gen games being played right now for the PlayStation 5. I've only been playing Astro's Playroom, which is amazing on the new controller. This thing is, wow, I gotta say, I didn't think this rumble and the haptic feedback thing would be, and the trigger controls would be as impactful as they were, but they definitely were a different feeling that you've never felt before in a game. To the point of annoyance, where like the motors are too loud and it totally messes up the battery life on this controller. So in Astro's Playroom, there's this part where you have to play as like a monkey grabbing onto like a rock wall. And then so my wife, she was sleeping on the couch while I was playing late into the night, and so I was playing, and so like it's very interactive. You have to like twist the controller like this, and you have to stab at the triggers like this, because there's feedback into them, and then so it's really loud, and then and then the speaker also is in tune with your actions on screen. It's actually more, your actions are more placed through the sound of the speaker of the controller than it is on the actual screen or your like sound device or whatever. So a lot of noise comes out of this. So it was actually kind of bugging my wife while she was sleeping. But I was like, wow, that's really powerful. The problem is that this thing only lasted for like 4 hours. More positives for the controller is that I like how it feels. I like how the analog sticks are super smooth for some reason. I don't like its overall design. I don't really care for it too much. Like how, like the two-tone scheme and everything like that, and it's like weird pajama or overall effect going on. But like it feels nice. I'm not gonna be looking at it all the time and judging it, but it feels right. My weird thing that they didn't implement into this controller in the D-pad is that, so normally there's like an indent in the middle section here of the D-pad. On the DS4, on the DualShock 4, okay, so on the DualShock 4, the indent is here because it's mainly meant for your thumb to rest comfortably inside of the D-pad cross. So if you see that little dent right here, your finger normally goes in there like that, right? So the DualSense doesn't have those little indents for each one of the points. So it's kind of feels stiff, if anything, and your fingers don't like accustomed to sit there. It's kind of odd to me. The buttons are up here are flatter than say the Xbox Series X's buttons, so they kind of feel mushy. They don't feel as tactile or as raised as the Xbox Series X controller, but I like. So with those negatives aside, like, it's still a really great controller, because it feels nice. Like, the touchpad is super responsive. The USB-C cable works. Actually, so that's another gripe of mine. When you're charging this, there's no indicator light on it to tell you that it's charging. So I had it plugged into my PlayStation 5, but the front port on the PlayStation 5 isn't active if you turn it off completely, or even in rest mode. So you could have this hooked up. So you could have this charged. You think it's getting charged like overnight while it's sitting down, but it's not, like, at all. So when I tried to play in the morning, I was like, oh shoot, this is dead. Like, how is that possible? So then I looked it up and I was like, oh, the port on the front isn't active while the PlayStation 5 is off. So I was like, damn. And you would have known that for a fact if there was like a light LED indicator here that's like charging orange or something, or if they had a firmware for the light bar here, which makes the most sense. I don't know why they don't do that. On the DualShock 4, they had like this light bar, so it was easy to tell whether or not this thing was like charging for you. So I don't know why they didn't do that. It's kind of weird, but they'll fix it. If Sony is anything, they'll know how to fix something like that. Let's see, other positives. So while playing Astro's Playroom, the effect of the haptic controls or the haptic feedback and the adaptive triggers is kind of lessened if, like, you silence the speaker on the front of the controller, because I wanted to see, like, okay, is it I mean, it's magic that it does this when you're playing the game, that you could feel Astro is just like walking through sand or ice, or it's like gripping on something. It feels like magic, but like not all of it can't be attributed to certain rumble features built into the controller, because that technology has been built into some other controllers before. So if you lower down the volume on the touchpad itself all the way down to 0 or like something really minimal, the effect is kind of gone. It's kind of broken. So the illusion is kind of broken and it doesn't work quite as well, but the gimmick is still pretty neat to check out. You could definitely see the potential for certain kinds of games to utilize this technology or this feeling kind of tech going forward. And it's something that Microsoft really has to address, actually. It's like one of those features that, like, remember when Rumble was like the new feature and then like everyone else had to buy like expansion packs like for the N64 or the Sega Dreamcast controller in order to have the Rumble feature built into it? Like, that's the type of level of technology that needs to be addressed by the Xbox Series X controller. So yeah, that's kind of interesting note to me. What else is there? So yeah, that's so the two next gen games I've been playing are basically Astro's Playroom and Bugsnax, and I mean next generation kind of games, only because my Miles Morales hasn't shipped yet, and I'm just gonna wait for Demon's Souls as like hopefully a Christmas present. Because I still because the game that I've been playing like the most is actually this one right here. Yakuza 7 or Yakuza Like a Dragon is one of the best RPGs I've ever played, and that was that's a weird statement to make, because I was reticent about playing this in the first couple hours. Like, I actually kind of was like, oh, I can't play this right now. I'm not digging it, because I was in the Yakuza mindset, the Yakuza playstyle mindset, and I was playing it like a Yakuza game, which is, I mean, sure, it has the how do you say, it has the soul of a Yakuza game built into it, but it's not mechanically a Yakuza traditional title. So it plays more of like a Dragon Quest and Persona game, if anything. So once I started playing it like that, I was having a hell of a time. And once you start exploring the town and all the and interacting with all the characters in the game, it's incredible. Ichiban, I was like, I don't envy the person that had to create the character that replaced Kazuma Kiryu, and they did it with Ichiban. And I was like, wow, I can't believe that you were able to pull that off, because Kiryu has been around since 2005, and he is a staple of the series. So to change up your main character after so many years, which is deserved. I mean, they've gone through like 8 games now, and or probably more than 8 games. But like after that many games, you gotta bring in something new. You gotta freshen up the series. So they definitely did that with Ichiban. His energy and his like positivity is just it's addictive. And right after the elections hit, like it was like a sigh of and since like all the electoral votes were counted, it was like a big sigh of just like relief and just like beginning anew. And so like when I started playing this game, it like further heightened that sense of joy and like just being like, oh, we're finally getting over the hump. So like, yeah, this is an excellent game. I'm in only chapter 6.5, around that range, with about 20 hours, and I have yet to scratch the surface of this game. Like I said, it's actually if you've never played a Yakuza game before or a Dragon Quest game before, it's actually really hard to jump into this, coming from a Yakuza standpoint, because it takes a while for this game to get going. If anything, this game suffers from pacing issues, mainly because it has to like introduce new characters, it has to introduce new systems on like how to battle, how to recover, how to navigate the world. So like all that has to be introduced, and it takes a long time to develop them. But once it starts going, and once you come across like your second dungeon in this game, like it's a fun time, man. It is a great time. So yeah, this has been stuck in my Xbox the whole time. This is I wouldn't say this is the only game I've been playing on my Xbox. The other games I've been playing are the upgraded Gears 5, which, holy crap, I've never played in 4K before with HDR, and that game is a freaking like beast. That's a showcase. Like if you just got a new OLED TV or an HDR TV and you want to show it off with that game, because the amount of artistry of lighting through that game is just incredible. Oh my god. Granted, I have yet to play Demon's Souls, and I have yet to play Spider-Man, but like god damn, like that is the pure power of just the Xbox Series X for a last gen game that came out last year. And the fact that it looks that good like right now, that's just whew. It's a godsend. So yeah, I've been playing those two mostly, and Tetris Effect Connected, which is glorious once again. The multiplayer suite is amazing, and so like those are the only ones I've been playing, but those aren't considered next gen games. So I have yet to open up one of my next gen games. I do have a bunch of packages here related to all that, but I'll get to that in a bit. So let's talk about the Xbox Series X. Okay. So here's the baby, right here. Baby Dondo. I want to say that this is the best designed Microsoft product they have ever created, including all their Surface series notebooks and everything, and all their other better than the Zune, I can tell you that. But this is like surprising. Like when you see it, you're just like, that is such a unique box. Like everything it needs to be is here. Whereas the PlayStation 5 is like overly outlandish. This is utilitarian. It is engineered to to a spec. Like you could tell, like how do you say that? What's a good analogy for this? Okay, so if you guys are into cars, here's the analogy I would say. So the PlayStation 5 is more like a Ferrari. It's completely outlandish. It is completely in your face. It's not afraid to hide anything. It's super loud in your and it's like that guy you see in Vegas all the time with like, he's in his like mid 40s, but he wears like ripped ass jeans and like a big chain like around his neck, and with like a shirt that's unbuttoned down to here. Like that's this thing. It's all like all up your face. It's unapologetic. But it's fun to party with, and it's fun. It's like, you know, you're gonna have a great time with this guy. So that's what I would describe this. So it's like a Ferrari, okay? Crazy curves, all about artistry. Doesn't necessarily have to make any sense or engineering, you know, bottom line. It doesn't have to meet any of those goals. It just needs to look pretty and be really, really fast. And that's what the PlayStation 5 is to me. The Xbox, on the other hand, is like a German designed supercar. So if you want to think of any supercars that are German, you want to go to like Porsche. Like this is the Porsche of video game consoles right now. And it's further into and to support my idea on why that is that, so if you look at the controller that it's had, so this controller hasn't changed too much over the years. This has been pretty much the same controller for the last 5 years. And so if you look at a lot of Porsche's designs like its 911, it basically had the initial design correct with the 911, and it kept refining its design language and kept improving on what they were good at to get to this point, like right here. And so Xbox has done that, or Microsoft has done that with this Xbox Series X, and they've gotten rid of all the fluff, all the unnecessary bits in order to achieve a minimalistic design such as this. And they definitely have succeeded in that. Like the more I look at it, the more I actually like the look of this a little bit more. Not by much, but a little bit more. Because it's understated, it's sleek, it's kind of underdogish, if you will. And it's utilitarian. It doesn't have to be like this crazy looking box in order to pull off the most powerful visuals that are on the console. So it's it's deliberate. That's pretty much what I got to say about that thing. The controller, I actually didn't like when they revealed it, because I was like, that's so boring. Like, why do you keep making the same design and not improving on it? Which I was definitely wrong on. This is a smaller controller, so this is slightly smaller than the Xbox One controller by a little bit. But again, it's like the Porsche design language. It's like it keeps refining its design, and it keeps redacting parts that it doesn't need. So if you look at like, this is gonna get super nerdy from a design standpoint, but if you look at this controller, there's a lot of symmetries other than the stick layout, but there's a lot of symmetries and a lot of smooth surfaces that are very symmetrical and pleasing to the eye. Like, if you're an engineer and you design in CAD, you know what I'm talking about. Like, these are like snapped edges, and it's very sleek. Like, there's weird shapes on the DualSense controller. Like, if you look at the controller this way, like, what is that weird shape from the dual toneness of the black and the white? Whereas like in here, every crease and everything else is just matched up really perfect. Like, if you look at the top of the DualSense, like here, this is a bit of part that's kind of weird to me. So you look at, you see this like little gap right here? Like, I don't know why that's there, and it's really weird when you like I thought, I was like, at first I was like, I don't care about that, but like once you start looking at it, I was like, kind of bugs me, because like if you looked at the top of the Xbox Series X controller, all of that stuff is like cleaned up. Like, you notice how this line right here flows right into this line and goes straight across right here and then back into this trigger? Like, all of it's like super clean, and the grips help. And it's just like, I was like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Whereas like the DualSense controller is like, what is that? What is that shape on the bottom of this thing? And it's weird that this is flat. I think just so it doesn't cut into your, if like you look at it this way, it doesn't cut into your palm as much. So, but it's weird that they decided to design it like that, where they just made it flat. So you have this like weird shape, like right there. It's really odd. Like, I don't know how to describe that. And then it has like all this weird lettering on the back of it, which is standard FCC stuff. But like the Xbox Series X controller, it's all minimalistic. Like if you look at that, none of that branding or that extra trademark language exists on the surface of this thing. So it, I don't know, works really well. They hide it all behind the back battery plate and everything like that. So that's where all that stuff goes. So the more I use this controller, the more I enjoy it. That's what else is here. The share button is a nice bonus that should have been there from like the mid-gen cycle of the Xbox One, to match up with like the share button on the DS4. That should have been there a lot earlier. The D-pad is much nicer. It's actually probably the best Tetris D-pad like I've ever used. So if you play a lot of Tetris Connect, like this is the D-pad you want to use out. It's super clicky, a lot of good feedback. Again, it has that indentation in the middle of the D-pad of the cross, where it makes your thumb rest really nicely into it. So then you get these nice tactile feedback that you could hear, and it's like super accurate. That's the best way I could describe that. That is much more accurate than the squishy D-pad that's on the DS4 or even the DualSense and the Nintendo Switch Pro controller. So like, just this is really nice, especially like if you play Gears, you want to swap weapons, you know exactly where you're gonna be. So this D-pad layout works really, really well for those types of games. What else is great about this thing? The grips. So the grips are really nice. If you ever held a gun, it's kind of like the stippling on a gun, which is what like the closest I could probably describe it to. It's a lot more pronounced on the Xbox Series X controller compared to the Xbox One controller. This pattern was actually on the back of those, but it was so low detail and like, how do you say it, the topography was so low that you can barely even tell it's there. They kind of remedied that a little bit with the newer Xbox controllers with this rubber grip on it, but I like this a lot better. It's easier to clean. It will probably rub off after amount of time and use, but I mean right now as it is, it feels great. The only thing I don't like is that, so whatever plastic that they used in the thumbsticks, when you hit the sides of the plastic thumbstick against the wall, how do you see that? Do you see that? When you hit against the wall, there's this injection molding part of the thumbstick that rubs in the wrong way. So like when you do like full circles, you could feel resistance and some weird friction going on when you do that. No dead zones or anything, but like you could still feel that kind of resistance, which is noticeable when you hold one of the DualSense controllers and you do the same motion, and it's super silky. Like there's very little friction here, and if you look, and I think they solved that by, so if you look here, there's a little plastic ring in there to help smooth out that motion. So I think that's what they did to have like a little less friction in the joysticks. I'm sure over time this might wear out really easily, but as is, like right now, it feels really nice. It's buttery smooth compared to the Xbox controller. So yeah, overall I like both. They're actually really neat, but I would give it to the DualSense just because feature-wise it is definitely the next-gen feeling controller, and the Xbox controller definitely has to include these adaptive triggers, and not necessarily the haptic feedback. The haptic feedback is okay, but the most important one is the adaptive triggers to me. So yeah, and probably not a microphone. Probably a microphone is probably really important. But yeah, like this is the kitchen sink, but this is like, you know, just the utilitarian equivalent of that. I don't know what that is. Anyway, so yeah, back to the console. So the console itself, I have running through. I have only installed Yakuza, Gears 5, Master Chief Collection, Forza 7, Tetris, Connect onto the main system. So then if I want to do quick resume, I could do it easily between all of those games. But I did buy one of these guys. This is a 5 terabyte WD Black And so I was able to download the entire Gamepass library on this hard drive, and so it is all located on here. So when I connect, and I did that through an Xbox, my old, I'm sorry, I did that through my Xbox One X, my Cyberpunk Edition 1. And so once I had it all downloaded all on here, all I had to do was unplug it from there and plug it straight into here, and all of the games showed up right on the system, and I didn't have to do anything else. Like, it just it recognized it. The Xbox Series X recognized it was part of my games library, added it in there. So I officially have, with this drive in here, over 300 games almost. So 293, something like that, give or take. And then so that's how many games are included in the system. And yeah, it's nice. So I can't wait to explore more. But I haven't had too much time. I've just been playing Yakuza the whole time. But yeah, it's been super smooth. The UI of the Xbox Series X is boring because it's samey as the previous version, but it works. You know exactly where things are going to be. The shortcuts are easy to find. It doesn't have as much as a problem anymore of advertising on the main homepage as the PlayStation 5 does. But it's probably going to change, most likely. I like the motion parts of the home screen. And what else is there? Oh, it's super quiet. Like, I don't hear this thing at all, even when it's turned on and booting up. I could feel that it's warm on the top when I hover my hand on top of it. But other than that, I haven't really, like, I just don't notice it's there. All I focus on is the games. Like, that's all I focus on with the Xbox. I don't have to worry about these weird OS installs. Like, it just automatically does it for me. Backwards compatibility is the same way. I just pop in a disk in here, it reads it, and just starts installing it like it's nothing. Especially like, which is important to me because I have old Xbox, like OG Xbox games that are backwards compatible through here. So yeah, it's nice not to be, like, I don't have to worry or think about the compatibility issues here. I've even been able to install my where's my 360 wheel? I hooked up my 360 wheel and it kind of works. It doesn't have any force feedback, but it still works somehow. It just recognizes it. It recognizes it as like a normal controller. OS for the Xbox, it's nice that you could customize. Well, they've had this for the existing Xbox, but you could customize your home screen and arrange games or like cluster of games or apps together in or any order that you want. Or say you only use your system to play Halo, you could have that as like your main splash page right onto the OS. So you could customize it a lot. Which has been a thing. So you could even customize like your go-to home screen. So like if you press the Xbox button on the top, it normally brings up a sidebar menu, and you could customize that sidebar menu in however order you want. You could have like your friends list, your broadcasting page, your captures page, your messaging page, and you could order that however you want, and your achievements page. So that's like a nice thing, which like you can't do that on the Sony PlayStation 5 right now, which is kind of weird. I guess it's not needed, but it kind of takes getting used to. Like, since I was so familiar with the Xbox interface from the Xbox One, it was super easy to jump into here and just know where everything is, get it set up right away, and the installation went like flawlessly. Oh yeah, that was another thing. So initially when I was installing this, I had you have to like use your app. You have to download an app onto like your Android or iOS device. And like, since my information was already built into there, all it needed to do was recognize it and communicate that back to this unit. So it was like really fast. And I have an Ethernet cable running to this thing, so it downloaded whatever day one patch needed to be downloaded, and it was like up and ready to go. On the PlayStation 5, I ran into this weird issue where I was using an existing HDMI cable, which was already there. It was just meant for my my Nintendo Switch. And so when I hooked that up, it wouldn't display anything on the screen. So I restarted it, I hard rebooted it and everything. Still no picture on the screen. And then so all I had to do was like use the cable it came with, and that somehow fixed it. I don't know what hardware issue that was, in order to get that started, which is kind of, I don't know, weird and technical. I don't understand how that works, but yeah, that was a kind of weird thing that happened. Another thing I noticed I don't like on the PlayStation 5 is that it doesn't support 1440p resolution. So I have on my main computer rig, I have an ultra wide 32-inch monitor. So, and it's only a 1440p monitor, but it runs at 120 hertz. So I was able to plug in this thing into it, and it ran fine. It had a hard time configuring to a 1440p signal only because it's an ultra wide screen, so I didn't know what to do with the extra screen space. So once you set it to like a widescreen or instead of like a just scan, it configured it in the way that I could utilize it. It doesn't have HDR. The monitor doesn't have HDR, so which is kind of a bummer, but it has FreeSync on it. So it worked. Like once those settings get set up, this thing works great. The PlayStation 5 can't do that, so it's stuck in 1080p. And that was my main screen for using my PlayStation 4 before, and games looked great on there because they had great graphics like Spider-Man. But after a while, you could definitely tell like once I switched from my PlayStation 4 console to my like PC games, like there's no contest on like what looked better. Like the PlayStation 4 ran at like 30 frames and at like hopefully 1080p, and it was like struggling. Whereas my PC was running like fucking like 4K. I'm sorry, it was running at like 1440p at like 170 frames. Like that was like the max counter on some of the games. And I was like, I was like, no contest. This looks way better. But like, yeah, this thing ran like a champ. I didn't really have any issues with it. So, and that's why I say like Microsoft really designed this with like a lot of open-ended and a lot of functioning devices in mind. I think because it has that PC background and it knows. So, I don't know, just works, and I don't have to think about it. That's the best part about owning this Xbox. Yeah, so that's my initial impressions for both of the systems right now. Is there anything else I have to go over? Take screenshots. Oh, okay, yeah, so that's one thing I don't like about the Xbox OS is that I can't take screenshots like on the OS like at all. Like if I'm on the homepage and I want to take a screenshot of my homepage and what it looks like with a wallpaper, like I can't do that. I have to like grab out my phone and like take a picture of the screen, which is kind of a pain in the ass. You should update that, Xbox. I think that's a nice feature to have. What else is there? Oh yeah. Let me go back. So one of the coolest parts of the PlayStation 5. So if you have an existing PlayStation 4, one of the coolest things you could do with your PlayStation 4 and your PlayStation 5 is use Remote Play for the PlayStation 5. So my PC monitor is in another part of the room, and my PlayStation 4 is right under it. And so there are times when I can't be at the main TV because I'm like either working or just like I don't want to sit on the couch, and I'll play my PlayStation over there. But I don't want to move anything. So you just hook this thing up through Remote Play on the same network with your PlayStation 5, and you could play your PlayStation 5 games straight through your PlayStation 4. I was able to play Astro's Playroom with the normal DualShock 4, which is like kind of funny to me, because then I'm like, oh, you don't actually need the controller, but to experience something that you definitely never felt before, you probably want the DualSense controller. But you could definitely just play regular games, like PlayStation 5 games that don't utilize all the motion control stuff as much with this thing. It actually does do it registers the touchpad. It does the sensing, the motion sensing thing. The thing it just doesn't do are the adaptive triggers and the haptic feedback stuff. So yeah, you could have like 85% of the experience playing through a PlayStation 4 through Remote Play on your PlayStation 5. It worked pretty well. The resolution definitely took a hit, mainly because the network, I wasn't using a hardwired network. Everything was through Wi-Fi. Yeah, it was okay. The PlayStation 5 is definitely hooked up through Wi-Fi 6 on my router right now, but the PlayStation 4 only maxes out at, I think, wireless 5, like Wi-Fi 5, something like that. So there's kind of a disconnect. So the routing is okay, but it worked. It worked well enough. I wouldn't play fighting games through it. I just play regular adventure games, but it definitely worked out. So that was like a nice like extra feature. So I'm glad I didn't get rid of my PlayStation 4. I have an option to play PlayStation 5 in 2 different places without moving the damn thing. Microsoft basically solved that by using its Gamepass service. So yeah, it's nice that PlayStation has an option nowadays. That's all I'm thankful for. That's pretty much it for the consoles. I know I talked about Yakuza a little bit too much, but I can't gush enough about that game. I'll probably have its own review coming up sometime. All right, so maybe at this point of the video you're wondering like why did you buy both systems? Because like not a lot of people are in like the both camps kind of situation. Because of their heavy tribalism, they're only like a PlayStation fanboy or like a Microsoft fanboy, Xbox fanboy. And so like a lot of people will probably be asking like, why did I buy both? And especially this early on in a console's generation. This is the first time ever in my entire life that I've bought both competing consoles on day one. After all this time, I've only ever bought 2 systems on their actual launch days. One was the Nintendo Wii and the Nintendo Switch. If you want to count handhelds, the only one I ever bought on launch day was the original Sony PSP. And the first 2, the Nintendo Wii and the PSP, were only because I worked at a game store. So like I had like a lot of access to that and like not heavy discounts, but some discount to encourage me to buy those systems. So I bought those day one. And the Nintendo Switch day one, of course, because like people were going crazy for those things, and I wanted to play Zelda so bad, so I bought one of those like day of. But this is the first time I've ever bought 2 competing consoles at the same time. It's a huge investment, especially for these 2. Nintendo consoles are relatively cheap compared to these 2 systems here, so yeah, I felt that I was like, you know what, in order to get to this level in next-gen gaming, especially at this early point in the race, it's okay to spend for both of them at the same time. And here's why. The last generation consoles, the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, never saw a really big discount on the actual system itself. What used to happen in generations prior was that like the PlayStation 3 or the PlayStation 2 would release at a certain price point, $300, right? Or $600 in the PlayStation 3's case. Eventually, over the lifespan of the console, they would do price drops, like MSRP price drops of like $100, maybe $50 to reduce the price of entry for newer players to jump into the system. So that never happened in this last generation of consoles. What they did instead was do a mid-cycle refresh, which kept the price like relatively stable and at the same rate. So like buying a PlayStation 4 Pro, for instance, was still $400 up until, and it's still $400, like even though like this thing released. And the gap in like technologies and everything is huge compared to the both of them, which doesn't make any sense. So even though even though I'm buying in relatively early on the ground floor, I really don't expect the prices of any of these 2 to fluctuate too much over the entire console's life. So I'm relatively safe in that regard. Like when the PlayStation 4 came out, that's $400 OG one. I didn't buy it on launch date. I waited, and some guy actually traded it in, and I got it for like $200 at like a half price books. And that was like probably a year and a half into its lifespan. And so I've had that $200 PlayStation 4 for the last like 5 years, 5-6 years. And that's been like insane to me that the value has relatively stayed stable for that long. Like, cause it still plays all my games, and with relatively simple maintenance, you could have that thing like last forever. And the same goes with all the previous ones. However, with this generation, it's like really weird. In the last generation, it's really weird that they never dropped in price. So this $500 console will probably stay $500, with maybe probably like a hard drive upgrade like down the line. So like maybe instead of 1 terabyte, there's going to be a 2 terabyte drive here by the end of its console life. But other than that, it's going to relatively stay the same. mainly because they don't make their money selling this stuff at a discounted price anymore. It's through their services. So it's the competing services of the PlayStation Now, PlayStation PSN Plus, PlayStation Plus, versus the Gamepass and Xbox Live system that Microsoft has. And that's where they make a lot more money for their consoles in general. For that's how each company realizes they could kind of forgo a lot of third-party sellers like Walmarts and the GameStops of the world and just sell directly to the customers. That it's an all-digital library that carries with you wherever you go. And so that's the convenience of it. And that's mainly where they're going to make their money. They're not going to make their money off of this model like how they used to have before. So yeah, that's why I bought both at the same time. I don't think I'm going to be losing any money. Well, I will be losing money, but on depreciation wise, I don't think I'm going to be losing too much for me to care, considering how early I could jump in. So that's why I bought both, because the last generation held incredibly still and stable price-wise. And even though there's a mid-gen refresh, I've seen that, honestly, I don't really care for it too much. Like when a PlayStation 4 Pro came out and I saw like it's like 4K upgrades and everything, like I wasn't really that impressed. Same thing with Xbox One X. Like I was like, this is cool, but mainly the upgrade from a regular Xbox One to an Xbox One X was more like quality of life features. Like it was a smaller box, it had a bigger hard drive, it was definitely quieter, it ran games at the proper 1080p it should have been running, and 4K possible if you already had the display. So like that was like quality of life type stuff, but it's not really necessary in order to play the games you wanted to play. And that's what the PlayStation 4 was able to do successfully, like my OG PlayStation 4 was able to do. It still runs Ghost of Tsushima and Last of Us Part 2 like easily. And God of War, I never have to worry about it having to run. It just does it. So and like I have no reason and no doubt in my mind that like these two consoles will probably be the same in its life. That being said, it is pricey. It's not cheap to jump in all at the same time, but hey, figuring out, man, figuring that shit out. So anyway, those are my first impressions. So I hope you have a good holiday season. Keep gaming out there and keep hunting. If you follow on Twitter at Wario64 and at Cheapassgamer, those guys are like on top of it of whose availability is open for certain markets, on who has the stock of Xbox Series X's and S's and the PlayStation 5. So they're out there, and more will be coming in the next few weeks. So don't get discouraged. Keep hunting, because you're gonna have an awesome time with either one of these systems, to be completely honest with you. I've actually played more of my Xbox Series X only because Miles Morales and Demon's Souls hasn't arrived, but I definitely played more of this. And the experience is honestly seamless. There's no issues at all. I've had 2 crashes on this guy and a weird install experience, but once that was out of the way, there are definitely new experiences with this guy. And it might have some growing pains at the same time, but man, it's exciting to play a PlayStation 5. I know what I'm getting with my Xbox, and I love it because I could just sit back and just like mentally check out. I know what's on there. Like it has my Halos, it has my Gears, it has my Forzas. Like I love it. But man, the promise of this guy, it's high. If the Xbox stable of games could match the quality of the PlayStation 5 stuff that's coming around the corner, then man, it's an all-out battle for our dollars, and it's gonna be great. Like it's gonna be awesome to see these two companies compete for our attention, and it's gonna be sweet. Trust me, gaming is gonna get really good this time around. So anyway, have a nice holiday, stay safe out there, and yeah, take care. Peace.